Hey everybody, welcome back to Before the Commit, episode 10. Holy crap, we're in double digits. This week we're going to be talking about Claude security code reviews and pipelines. And also, is there an AI bubble? Probably. And of course, we'll hit our new series, the Kill 'em Chain. We'll talk about RAG attacks. With me as usual, I have with me my friend Dustin Hillgartner. Hey Dustin, how's it going?
Hello.
How'd the move go?
Very good. Although I don't have my place completely soundproof, so you might get some leaf blowers or something until I get everything set up.
It's all good. So before we get into the tool of the week, want to just talk a little bit about this AI bubble thing going on. I've known for years like that VCs were pumping capital into into the startup world, and there's always been these overvaluations, and I think this AI craze has made investors, for a variety of reasons, unsure about where to put their money. I think people are riding this train. We've talked before about, like, is the money in the models? Is it in the usage of the models? Is it in the hardware? Is it in the chips themselves? And then I think a few weeks ago there was an announcement of OpenAI getting an injection of capital from NVIDIA, and then Oracle injecting money into NVIDIA, and then OpenAI injecting money into into Oracle. And there's like some weird like circular chart of like money moving around, and it's like, wait, it all kind of cancels out, kind of, sort of. But it reminds me of the CDO thing that happened in the mortgage crisis in 2007, where there's just tranches of investment and overvaluations, and like, I don't question whether or not there is a bubble. I think there definitely is a bubble, and just curious what you think about it, from your perspective.
Yeah, I think there's like a bubble that has to do with the fact that everybody thought that you'd be able to do far more with AI far quicker than what's materializing. Instead of it being a replacement for full employees, it ends up being, a very significant productivity increase, but it's not replacing somebody. And I think there's a realization that it's not like this magic pill. Like, it's not like, bam, here comes like a new entity that's going to be like, yes, sir, let me do your laundry. It's going to be like a lot of hard work of building. It's like a whole new it's a whole new architecture, right? So it's like you have first floor applications, you have second floor applications, and years from now you'll have orders of magnitude of generations of applications built on top. But this isn't some sort of magical pill that's going to get you to the end on day one. This is just another sequel, to a never-ending loop of additional stages to this level of productivity in engineering. So I don't think that like engineers are going to be replaced by AI. I mean, I guess I do in some sort of like sci-fi way, ultimately, but I don't think that that's coming in the short term. And I think that software engineers are ever more important. I think there's a new skill set that has to be learned. And I think once that realization sinks into the greater market, all of the very speculative money that expected a return very quickly is going to start saying, "Oh, whoa." Either the losses that I have are, they're going to try to get out, or they're going to say, "Hey, my gains, I'm going to try to get out with my gains right now because I see that the sci-fi vision I had is too far in the future for me to have allocated that much money in it." Like the people who have put the whole house in it because they thought they were going to miss the boat are
Right.
now going to readjust their allocation and be like, "Okay, well, I get it. This is a growth industry, but it's not like let's put everything into it." And I think that once those people start moving capital out, it's going to start a cascading effect, of people saying, because now real losses are starting to happen, right? Once those people start taking their money out, then real losses start to happen. Then those people start to run, the very speculative people start to get out. And then there's a bottom of some sort. And then the people who still believe in it long term look at it as like a buying opportunity. They get in cheap and the next leg goes back up. So I do think we're in that trend. And I think the catalyst to the trend was that now we all understand AI to a great deal. The people are starting to get an idea of like what the applications are going to look like, what the agentic workflows are. There's starting to be a staging point to start putting your feet down and building things on top of. And that staging point is not so far in the sci-fi that it's replacing people. It's just a very, very significant productivity increase. And I think that the people who are expecting George Jetson overnight are with the market.
Yeah, one of the things I worry about too is how investors sell off their risk. Like when you look at the mortgage crisis in 2008, people started selling off their debt, to other people. So I'm curious to see. Well, I don't understand the hedge fund market as well as a hedge fund manager might, but I imagine that some investors are already looking to sell off bets on a portion of whatever they made a bet on, similar to the mortgage crisis. And like this is a lot, from a financial perspective, this is a lot worse than it's always worse than what you know, in terms of when you start actually when the market bottoms out on this, when there's mass panic about, okay, the returns are not going to happen quickly, there's definitely incremental growth here. Certainly, in terms of technology, like the way that the models are progressing and like the way that the products on top of the models are progressing, like the foundation, like OpenAI, Grok, Gemini, Claude, the competition between those four companies and, the continuously like improvements that are coming out are happening at really breakneck speeds, but it's not happening in a way, I think, like you said, like,
well, it's a question of whether or not the sizable market that's obviously being created based on the productivity increases that we've seen, it's not going away, right? Like,
sure,
it's not like, oh no, the tools I'm using that double or triple my speed at coding, I hope they don't go away. They're not going away. It's just that there was an awful lot of investment in, it's kind of like the .com a little bit, right? Although I think that was more of a T-com boom and bust than it was an internet thing. But it was kind of like how people envision the internet thing a little bit, where there's just like, people are thinking AI is going to be everywhere right away. And it will be everywhere maybe over time, but right away, it's going to take some time.
Yeah,
and there's certain applications that are
ramp ups. Yeah.
There's certain applications that are very monetizable right now. And there's certain applications that are going to be monetizable once you get to level 2, level 3, level 4 generation of like these agentic workflows, right? And it has to do with the complexity of the task, right? It's like if all you need is a code review, then it can do that right now, right? But if you need like a very, very complex architecture of if this, then this, and a lot of different sentiment analysis and a lot of different steps like that, all those things are coming. Like all those, like it's going to be able to order your Uber Eats and order groceries for you and nail all your preferences and pick the right grapes and everything like that. It's going to be able to do all that stuff because it has the ability to make those decisions. It's just that those are workflows that have, and
Human
like
in the loop.
they have the permutations of if statements to get that job done is so large that it requires like tooling that's going to allow you to get that scale in terms of creating those workflows, right? And it may be that just the way to do it is it looks at you do it with a video one day and some sort of cool software middleware converts that into steps. But there's some sort of ability to create the steps at this point. Like if it's a 10 or 12 step process, no problem, right? But if it's like a 10,000 or 100,000 step process, then that's where it's really just an input problem, I think.
Yeah, I
probably
think
like a metadata problem.
I think too about the due diligence behind what investors have decided where to put their money. Like how easy may it have been to sell an investor on this thing that we are doing for AI without product market fit, and the amount of ability. So it's almost like discovering gold. Like, okay, so let's go where no one's digging. We don't know if there's gold there or not, but we're going to set up, all the equipment in the world and dig because everybody around us is digging for gold and they found gold. So we'll find gold here. And, at some point you realize like you actually have to do a little research and determine whether or not like the likelihood of gold is going to be where you're about to dig before you spend lots of money. So I suspect that there's a lot of bad investments around there, around tech that has no product market fit yet. But there are probably really good investments, really good places to put your money, even with the market still being, with things evolving so quickly. I think there's some tried and true ways of software engineering that are going to stick around. And like, I think you're right. It's like about augmenting. It's not about replacing right now, at least in the short term.
Yeah, I think it's also about how the VC stuff works, right? Like for those not familiar with how venture capital works in engineering, software engineering, is like 80% of their investments are going to go to zero. And then they're expecting like a handful, these things they call unicorns, to make so much money that it doesn't matter that all the rest of them went to zero. So they're like spreading seeds. They're like Johnny Appleseed of the engineering world. And there's a lot of people that are very attuned to these moments where there's like this new technology that comes out and it gets the VCs excited. They have a lot of money that they need to spread in order to get this sort of farming to work so that their 20% can yield and their 80%, they like it all to yield, but it doesn't. It's like that saying they have about marketing. It's like half of your marketing is a complete waste. It's just that nobody knows which half it is, right? Something, but anyway, we're in that period right now where it's very obvious which one of the 80% are losers, but we're not sure which one of the 20%. We're not sure if there's any winners yet. And once those first handful of winners start to appear and the industry start to evolve and people go, okay, there's a gusher right there, then all of a sudden this like bust cycle will turn into like the rebound.
Yeah. And I also wonder if the scale at which these things are growing, like you can see like the amount of data centers that are being built and how quickly they're being built and the amount of chips that have to be produced and the minerals that are required. Also, there are tariffs happening right now that may require repositioning where some of those, if it's in the US or some other country, repositioning manufacturing. For example, Apple struck a deal with Texas Instruments to make a chip, one of the chips for them, so that it was happening on American soil in order to avoid a potential tax on and cutting into their margins. So yeah, I'm curious also if like the amount of money that has been pumped into it and the scale of expectations can actually even be met due to resource constraint.
I've also heard that there's pushback in communities that are having data centers being built, because there's been upwards movement in local energy prices when a data center of that sort is in the neighborhood. So, and I've heard that in other sources too, that the data centers the projections that the energy companies have for prices over the next 5 years is rising. I think I heard the other day that they were saying there's nothing you can do about the next 5 years or something like that. It's all baked already. And all the things you could do to increase the energy are years out.
Yeah.
You're talking about conservation over the next couple of years, or ways to do more with less or whatever. But I think all those things align for there to be a pullback, a testing, a crucible period where some of the market is burned off because energy prices start to go higher. I think the price per token will drift up. Subsidies will pull back a little bit. Folks that can't get a lot of value out of their tokens are going to start not being economically sound. And the ones who are getting a lot of value out of their tokens will continue to prosper ever more as their competitors start to go out of business. And I think that's just how the next stage, that's how capitalism works, or that's my opinion at least.
Yeah, no. I mean, the cycles show that for sure.
Yeah.
I did think it was interesting. Last week, Jeff Bezos was at a conference in Turin, and he talked about in the next 10 to 20 years putting data centers in space because you don't have things like atmospheric weather conditions, and you basically have unlimited, not unlimited solar power, but you have uninterfered solar power.
I think Elon Musk also says something like that, where he says where the measurement of a civilization or something like that is like how much energy you're harnessing from your home star, and then the unit of measurement the unit of measurement of multi-star civilizations is like how many stars of energy there. So like the unit of energy would be like a Dyson star or something it's called. Funny enough, like apparently the vacuum company Dyson just completely hit the jackpot with that one. Apparently the maybe they did name it after that. I don't know. But in sci-fi or in physics or something like that, like a Dyson star is where you completely wrap a star with solar panels or something like that. And you get 100% efficiency and you have like the entire star being harnessed.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Unfortunately, the closest star to us is Alpha Centauri, which is about four light years away. So I don't know.
We'll just start wrapping our sun.
I think if you could move at the speed of light, we might get there like before civilization ends.
Yeah.
If we could move at the speed of light. Yeah. Anyway.
The good news is we all have free electricity. The bad news is there's a moment of dark on Tuesday at 4 p.m. But yeah, I mean, I guess hypothetically what they're saying is that AI scales indefinitely. So the idea is that bigger and bigger data centers, more and more energy, and you'll get smarter and smarter AI. into an infinity.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea behind the models, the foundational models being completely commoditized, like fractions of a penny, like the prices will definitely drive down and it will leave the LLM companies like, and I think they're padding themselves with adding other products like video generation and other generative AI features. Or, this week, OpenAI released their replacement, their N8N killer, if you will. So they're definitely looking for other ways
You
to.
thought the same thing I did when I saw it. I was like, wow, OpenAI came out with any.
Yeah, so it looks like the foundational, like Claude, Anthropic released Claude Code, way for you to eat more tokens, if you will. Um, you know, Gemini has VO3. They have the Banana Nano generator. I'm sure Google has more things up their sleeves, like browsing with AI and Chrome coming out soon, if it's not out already. Actually, I think it's out now. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, I can see the LLM companies actually kind of maybe being the first ones to get hit the hardest because they have the most investment, probably the least amount of returns.
You know what's weird is it sounds funny saying this, but I feel like the one that's the best positioned is Anthropic,
Hmm.
because coding is
Yeah,
that market is going to go to the
yeah.
moon.
Well, what if I'm pretty sure Grok will come out with their own version of they have a coding model, but I'm sure they'll come out with their own
You know,
command line tool or something like that. So maybe in general, the idea of coding tools is the thing to be in.
you can sense that all the other LLMs have figured that out because they're all starting to get coding tools. They're all trying to promote their coding tools more and more. So they're all figuring out that, like, okay, winter is coming, and maybe the safe spot in winter is the coding area because, hey, that's a gusher. These engineers are going to continue to pay for these tools no matter what happens. I mean, and I feel that way, right? Like, you're gonna have to tear the LLM coding out of my hand in my grave. I ain't gonna let that go. So I don't care what kind of recession comes around. I'm still gonna be paying for tokens on coding.
Yeah, if
So I feel like
anything, a
that's
recession. If anything, a recession will drive more toward that because if with a recession you might have higher labor costs, you might need to lay off people, so then that might actually incentivize a rapid adoption of AI in order to reduce labor costs. So I actually think a
yeah.
recession could be a good thing for I know it's people don't want to hear that, but
Yeah. Um, I think that it's just some people will be getting more productivity with AI. Now, someone's got to do the numbers on, like, the costs. Like, you are getting more productivity, but there are more costs when you're using AI to code. So
sure.
exactly what the P&L is at the end of the day is hard to
Yeah,
say. I
yeah.
think people have started to arrive at what the productivity increase is. I've heard numbers anywhere from 40% to 70% productivity increase. I feel like that's fair based on what I've seen. I throw around numbers like 2 or 3x, and you do get those types of productivity returns. But if you were to average it out over the course of a lifetime, I would say it's probably more like 70%, or,
Mm.
maybe. I don't know. I have
So
no idea. I'm just saying that those numbers don't sound like outrageous to me. They sound fair. Um, now, now you can you get the cost from that. Right now, you're getting a huge subsidized cost. It costs me almost nothing. It costs me like $100 a month to get those productivity returns, unlimited, pretty much, with a Claude Code. What is it, Max account or something like that?
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
Most people are doing that. There are people doing Kilo Code and Klein. There's a lot of chatter about Kilo Code and Klein with Grok Fast One, and there's also another Grok model that came out for coding recently that I haven't had a chance to mess with. Um, So I've heard a lot of chatter about that, but it seems like those are the main players in town. Even with Open AI with Codex, I haven't heard many people using that for doing sophisticated things. I haven't heard many people with Cairo code for Amazon. I haven't heard anyone with anything with Gemini. I'm not even sure what they have over there.
It's called Jules. It just came
Oh,
out.
Jules. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. We're talking about it today too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it seems to be the two leaders in coding are Grok and Claude, and I think Claude is hands down the leader because Claude Code and Claude work together hand in hand very well. I feel like Klein and Kilo Code being open source and then having Grok, they kind of are sort of cozying up to that a little bit more. But I imagine that there's still a little bit of clumsiness with the fact that it's two different developers, not vertically integrated. So yeah, that's the coding market. I think that market is going to be strong no matter what, right? So I think everyone's moving in that direction. I think Anthropic has the lead. I feel like ChatGPT probably is decently, because probably most people if have a ChatGPT account, like at least a minimum one, right? Like, what's the general market you think doing right now? Probably has a ChatGPT account because they're a first mover.
I see ChatGPT as being more the mainstream. Like your mom uses ChatGPT. That's not a your mama joke, by the way. Uh,
I wish my mom used ChatGPT. I don't even know if she uses anything.
I could see that being an insult to at one day, but yeah, like your friends use it. It's like most people, the average person is not aware of these other models, and I would
Mhm.
say that most software engineers are probably using Claude Code because it is probably the most well known and the most well advertised. But I would say very
Well,
few
it
people are.
depends, right? What you're using it for, right? Like I use Claude for coding, but I don't use Claude for anything else, right?
No, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying
Yeah.
most people are using ChatGPT for asking questions. They use it like Google, and
Mhm.
and kids use it. Younger people use it as like an operating system. They use it for. They're very familiar with RAG. They use it for school. In fact, there's a lot of stuff that's baked into ChatGPT that's specifically tailored for high school and university students. And they've made
Yeah.
investments into kind of building out like that sort of environment. And
Mhm.
then you have the coding world, which is Anthropic. And then, so I think those are really the two kind of majority of people sit in those two worlds. And then you obviously have the fringes where, people are using other things, whether it be Cursor or something else.
Yeah. And I think anyone who doesn't have a firm footing is going to be in trouble in this period coming up. Um, like if I were to have to guess which LLM were to have trouble, um, it would be any LLM that's outside of the big, Gemini. Like I think, I don't have much visibility into anything Meta is doing because Meta's in
Mm-hmm.
this like Facebook world that I am not in.
Yeah.
Maybe I
Yeah.
do need to get into
Their
it just so I
stuff.
have some visibility.
Yeah, they seem to be more of an integrated LLM versus a standalone. They have Llama, but their whole I don't see them kind of stepping out and like presenting their LLM in front of them. So like if you go to like Instagram or Facebook, like you can search using that and it can summarize discussion very much how X has integrated Grok into its interface. It's very much like that, but where Grok kind of sits outside of that, and you don't really. I haven't checked to even see if you can. I'm sure you can, but yeah.
You know what the interesting thing about Meta's strategy, or I'm not sure what their strategy is honestly, but what I guess their hand in the card game. The difference about their hand is they have such a huge ecosystem that, and this might be some of what you were just saying, that they can keep their LLM behind closed doors and still get all the data. They don't have to have this like public facing LLM. They can just keep it to their users, and they still have more users than the other. Technically, right? They probably have more users than the other ones.
Well, I think where Facebook's advantage is that they have probably the most interesting data of any of the other ones, because they can harvest things like buyer intent and social preferences. And I imagine that they might be playing a bit of a longer game with this, and perhaps sell the data or sell the models for some other reason. I don't know if they're in the LLM game the same way the other ones are.
Yeah. I wonder if you'd consider their data to be more dangerous too, right? Like how do you use Facebook's data in an LLM without inadvertently doing something dangerous? So, with every risk, there's opportunity. Like, I think they'll probably be the experts in answering that question, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's an interesting topic see what they do in that area.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that. We'll hit that on another time. Facebook LLMs. Yeah, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, but Google did put out their coding agent. It was already around, but it's now a CLI. So you basically had Gemini CLI. It seems to be using the Gemini 2.5 models under the hood, and it looks very similar to what Claude Code does. So similar approach. They have a free plan that offers up to 15 individual daily tasks and 3 concurrent tasks. Higher limits are available through Google AI Pro and Ultra plans, priced at $19.99 and $124.99 per month, offering 5x and 20x the limits respectively. So
it's priced the same as Claude Code, pretty much similar. Yeah, it's a struggle. Honestly, my gut tells me that they'll struggle, right? Because I haven't used it yet, so I'll have to use it and report back for real. But the struggle with engineering is, and some people have asked me this before, why is there like a first mover advantage? Well, the obvious is that people have heard of you because you're the first one to do it, right? So there's a PR side to it, like a social angle to it. But the other advantage is that you really don't know what to do with your product until you're out there in the arena. You know what I mean? If you're behind closed doors building something in your basement, you have no idea what to do. And the moment you launch your product and you have to go out there and ask someone in earnest to pay you money for it, it's finished, then you're going to hear the true feedback that you have never heard before up until that point. And that is an advantage that far surpasses anything, in my opinion, because you're actually learning real information. All your competitors who haven't launched yet are not learning anything. They're pretending to learn off of a whole bunch of tips you can read in books about how to get an advantage when you're not launched yet. But, getting out there first is always probably the best avenue in most cases. So I think that this is one of those cases. There's a lot of learning going on out here. Claude Code has their thing. Listen, if it was Claude Code versus something else doing CLI right now, and they both started today, I would say, who knows who's going to win? But Claude Code is they're how many versions in, they've done a whole bunch of things. So there's a lot of catch up to do. So that's a strong mover advantage, I would say.
Yeah, I think killer features is really how you would go. And like Android came out with the smartphone first, but Apple was a little bit late, but beat them with features and much better experience. So I mean, if somebody comes out with a killer feature, that might move the market in another direction.
I feel like moats, they aren't
Yeah.
what they used to be, right? Like it's a weird world where like everyone's fast following very quickly. Like I just got to go into my coding agent and be like, here's a feature, let's go build it. And if I burn the midnight oil, I can have something to show in a couple of days, maybe shorter, right? So it's weird. It's a weird world in that way. So I'm not sure if the feature concept will still play out. I think getting out there first, it's an advantage that maybe has way more advantage than any other time in software engineering. And to give you an example is like when I first started using Claude Code, right? It was clunky, right? Like I would, if I were, building let's say a Next.js website, that's pretty huge. If I were building a Next.js website, when you want to run it, you do like npm run dev, and the web server comes up, and then you can hit it with localhost 3000. Claude Code would do that. It would npm run dev, and it would end up with like trapped in this like conversation with that terminal who's probably blinking and asking for some input, and it would get stuck there, and you'd have to like cancel, get out of Claude Code, run it again, etc. And then it got better progressively. It would start to run it in the background. And now if you use Claude Code, it runs it in the background. It's doing curls against it. It's looking at the logs that are coming out in the background and coming back to the foreground. It just leaves this npm run dev hanging around in the background because it knows it's going to use it later. It's so smart how it uses it. And all that tooling is in the Claude Code. That's not the LLM doing that. That's the tools that are around the LLM doing that. And so that's the long tail of that. It may be that the LLM itself, it commoditizes, and it's the tools that are built around the LLM that actually is the moat.
Yeah, I think that's a good transition into tool of the week. So this week you looked at Claude Code Security Reviewer on GitHub. It kind of I'll just read it. It says an AI-powered security review tool, GitHub Action, using Claude to analyze code changes for security vulnerabilities. And then it says the features are AI-powered analysis, diff-aware scanning, PR comments, contextual understanding. It's language agnostic, and it does false positive filtering. So what was your sort of journey like with Claude Code Security Reviewer?
Yeah, so for those who want to find this, it's in GitHub under
We'll post a
Anthropic.
chat on the post the banner.
Yeah, but essentially it's Claude-code-security-review in Anthropic's repos. And essentially what it is, this is similar to their code review one they built, which is it in my opinion, it doesn't represent any real, like it's not like a real feature they built. It's more of like another example of an implementation of what they currently have, which is not to take away from it in any way. It's pretty cool. But essentially it's, preloaded prompts, preloaded action execution logic. And what it does is it uses GitHub Actions to place itself at the right place at the right time. So it wakes up in a runner with your code in a PR, and it can look at the changes that you have in your PR, and it can do a security code review, if you will. And it just, if you look at the prompt behind the scenes, it's basically has a list of types of security things it looks for. It's typically looking for the top 10 OWASP type stuff. and it does a decent job of looking for it. I wouldn't call this type of security scan thorough in the sense that it's probabilistic. It's not deterministic. It's not like going line by line. It's not.
Mm.
It's more of like these types of security scans. People might say, "Well, it's probabilistic. How is it going to catch things? How can you trust it?" Well, how do you trust your lead engineer to find software engineering problems? He's probabilistic, right? Like he has good days and bad days. He comes into work on Monday, he doesn't find the software flaw, but a week later he does, right? You still say he does a great job, right? Well, that's how this AI world works with probabilism. You want the AI to be looking at your code over and over and over again, and eventually it's going to find things that you didn't find. And you're going to be like, thank God I have this thing. It found that thing. Now, the fact that it looked at the code yesterday and maybe didn't find it, but it found it tomorrow, right? Doesn't mean that it's just a different world we live in with probabilism. So the reason why I mention that is because this is something that you want to have involved early and often, looking at your code, giving you suggestions, just like code reviews. You want to have it in place early and often. So you want to run it. Why not run it?
So it's not really a scanner per se. You wouldn't necessarily use it by itself. You would use it as like a way to you would layer this in with a bunch of other security features. It's not a standalone or a replacement for.
I would put it in the category of a code review, but it's a security code review, meaning it's looking at the changes that you have done in your PR from the perspective of security. And it has custom instructions that you can embed inside of it. And it gives you examples of using custom instructions. So for instance, if you're doing a particular type of login, you can inform it about what type of login you're in and kind of point it in the direction of certain types of things you're worried about. And then it will, be more inclined to go look at those issues and tell you about them. But essentially, it's a code review.
So to what extent would you customize something like this, or can you even customize it? Like I know it said it was language agnostic. It has, a lot of features already built in. Like, is there, I know there's ways to ignore certain directories. Like, you're not going to necessarily do a code review on node modules because that's not your code per se. I mean, but you may want to do that if you were worried about not being fully okay with accepting the risk of using third-party libraries. But what else can you customize?
And by the way, it's worth noting while you're in Claude Code, you can do /security review. And it will do this exact thing, but without the GitHub integration, meaning it'll just display the results for you on your screen, in your screen. So what this really is just that feature positioned to happen in your PR, and then it comments on the PR with the results, right? So that's what this action is. And it's really just an example of how you could use Claude Code in your actions. There's really infinite customization. You can do whatever you want with prompts. You can make security reviews. You can make compliance reviews. You can make et cetera. It's just about your knowledge of how to use it as a tool and implement it and put it in the right place at the right time.
So you could seemingly have it actually fix the issues it found as well.
Yeah. You could automate it. You can have it so that review happens, and then that review kicks off the fix, and then the fix is done automatically, or have a human in the loop, et cetera. So that's what I'm trying to say is that when we're talking to bring it full circle back to like whether we're in a
bubble,
is that AI gave us all these tools, right? I have all these new types of tools. So getting a whole bunch of new types of sensors and new types of tools. Now, instead of having to do dumb things like, does this word exist in this document, and then extrapolate something that is really a baseless assumption. Now you can do human type knowledge to ask questions about documents and understand things around in the world. And those new tools are going to develop a whole host of new workflows. One of which we were just going through, but it takes time to build those things, right? And the market is now realizing, hey, this is something where over the next course of the year or two, we're going to get the first version of these AI apps that are going to come out, and it's going to be like 20 or 30% productivity increase. But we're not going to be flying around to Mars. We're not going to be, have a magic genie that does anything for us. Not yet, at least.
Right. So moving on to the Killam chain, I was reading about this. I've been looking at MITRE Atlas. I know last week we looked at the OWASP top LLM vulnerabilities. So I thought I would take a look at MITRE Atlas. So it's a similar sort of framework, if you will, of ways to attack an LLM in order to know how to defend. And so I stumbled across this RAG-based attack, and it's called the Morris 2 worm. And basically, this is a zero-click worm. So a little background here. Some organization ingests all the email that they get into a RAG. And then that RAG sits on top of some LLM. And then they use it to query information about their email system or conversations that may have happened. So the idea is that you could basically if you knew about an organization, if you could somehow discover that an organization was using this particular system, which perhaps you can using a variety of mechanisms to fingerprint like what email system someone's using. There's a lot of ways to do it. For example, like MX records is one way to know. You look at headers, header signatures from an email system. But say, for instance, you knew that an organization was using a particular product that was vulnerable, you could craft an email that has a malicious prompt in it or hidden in it. And then you can essentially create a worm that starts to self-replicate with inside of the LLM system and get it to essentially disclose information inside of the RAG about other emails that were sent out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So presumably the self-replicating part would have to be that the LLM has write access somewhere, right? And that write access.
Well, it's a RAG, so
it would have to be able to write to the RAG, right?
Well, if the RAG is ingesting all emails, it would inject this malicious prompt as part of its normal ingestion process.
Yeah. And I was reading about it. It was saying something like the way it replicates would be if it communicates, it has the ability to put that message in another RAG that another LLM, another system was using. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
But it's similar to the last one we were talking about, where a lot of these LLM hacks, if you will, are going to be about mucking with the data. Either, and it's going to be, there's plenty of, pretty much anywhere in the life cycle, you can mess with the data, right? Obviously, messing with the training data we talked about last time, this is messing with the real-time data sets it has to look at. And then obviously, if you can somehow manipulate the data out after it gets out of the LLM, then you can do whatever you want at that point. But yeah, it's basically you manipulate the LLM by the data. And I think this is important to make clear because some people are thinking the LLM itself is being hacked.
Right.
But you're not actually exploiting the LLM per se. you're using the data, or if you are exploiting the LLM, you're using the data. I guess I should say.
Yeah. So the way that the researchers, this is it was a paper at Cornell University. Finally, we introduced the virtual donkey. The virtual donkey. It's a guardrail intended to detect and prevent the propagation of Morse 2 with minimal latency, high accuracy, and low positive rate. We evaluate. So it's interesting that there are guardrails being. It's almost like viruses. Like you have these individual patches that are being created as guardrails to kind of prevent these sophisticated attacks because they're very nuanced.
The best way I could describe the best way I could describe this is, for in layman terms, is that LLMs are exploitable because you're typically like focusing them in one direction, but you can easily get them to go in other directions because they're very general, even if you focus them. So you might have an LLM that's like great at making recipes. It's kind of like analogous to your grandma or something like that. But you can probably fool your grandma into answering back a bad email. So what you want to do is you want to put in like a guardrail, which is kind of like, in many cases, it's like another LLM, but that LLM has a different focus, right? It's not about recipes anymore. This LLM is particularly fine-tuned at making sure that grandma doesn't get a bad email, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you're sitting in front of grandma's email. And so both LLMs are able to do their jobs very well. Grandma's making great food and not getting exploited by bad actors through the email. And you don't have to make the food, but you're just reading all the email. So every LLM can have a task and has certain exploits to it that maybe you can get around. So a layered approach is, these guardrails are essentially layers. You like my analogy with grandma?
When you said that, I
wiped your brain.
I started thinking about that feature in I forget what it was called, but it was that feature in Claude, I believe, or it was a feature in MCP that lets two different LLMs potentially talk to each other. So I started, I that's why when you said grandma and like the LLMs talking back, I went down a rabbit hole in my head. But yeah, I mean, I wonder if there are all these like little LLMs that are, maybe they're not LLMs, but they're isolated LLMs that are kind of got different agents sitting on top of them in order to kind of create a blast chamber for security reasons, like almost like a zero trust network where you kind of flatten things out and prevent like people from doing proliferating from horizontally from within your network.
Yeah, you kind of got me going down in a rabbit hole a little bit too, but it might be like there's like multi-way conversations that take place. It's kind of like one agent is talking to another agent about purchasing something. Like your personal assistant agent is talking to the store agent about purchasing something. But then when it comes to paying, it might get your like banking agent involved, right? If there's something legal, it might get your legal agent involved. And all these might be different vendors that you have some sort of subscription with. And they like represent you in some way or another. That could be the way that these are deployed. And it could be using things like this MCP. It got me thinking, like, wasn't the OpenAI stuff that came out recently when we were talking about, it's like NAN, isn't that all built around MCP?
They were I don't know. All built around MCP. Maybe we should look at that.
They have the
That's
chat kit in there too, which is a brandable chat front end UI,
oh,
which is
ooh,
interesting.
ooh,
Yeah,
you
I
should
know
do
we've been
that.
looking into that recently. That's interesting. We should take a look at that.
Yeah. We have a quick turnaround for next Tuesday, but maybe we should look at that.
Yeah.
Um, there was something too. I am not, it's maybe we should cover that as the next vulnerability, but you also got me thinking about, for like data sovereignty reasons, like when, we've discussed like, okay, you're using a secure LLM,
Mhm.
whatever it's for this like highly regulated environment, but like are you sharing an LLM with somebody else? Like maybe your team, but like other customers? Because I've seen cases where people have been able to coerce an LLM into leaking data from other people's prompts, like other
Hmm.
people's sessions. So, the idea between microsegmenting LLMs,
Through memory, I would imagine, right? That's the only kind of state there would be, or it would
could be a
have to be
RAG. It
like,
could be RAG. It could be a RAG, meaning like you
yeah,
access somebody else's RAG on top of that, plus
mhm,
memory, plus
yeah.
whatever, a
An
session, right?
interesting topic to deep dive into because my understanding is it would have to be RAG, it would have to be memory, it would have to be um, like low level, like you're mucking with the system's RAM. Um,
I don't think it's at that level. Like we call that like side channel attacks, right? So remember years
caching,
ago,
caching
yeah,
is
caching,
a
yeah,
weakness. Caching,
yeah,
especially with semantic caching, can be
hmm,
a blessing and a curse.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So where I went with it was like the further need from like an architectural perspective, like to segment. Like I guess many companies don't do it because the infrastructure costs of segmenting LLMs is probably it's probably the margins on it. So like when you talk about doing things like subsidized costs for LLMs, whether it be Claude Code or whatever, I mean, I've seen things where code was being leaked. So people were like writing code and it was leaking out code from other people. I
mhm,
don't know if it was Claude or another model or something. Like it may have been Claude that was doing it, and it may have been patched since,
hmm,
but just from a security architecture perspective, a network perspective,
yeah,
the idea of these LLMs, being segmented from each other for data sovereignty reasons makes total sense. But obviously, the cost of doing it is significant, which it's like the whole shared hosting thing, right? When you would set up your own server or you would use a shared hosting provider. The security risks associated with a shared hosting provider are obviously greater than those of those that you're not sharing. So, but you weigh risk versus reward.
yeah. Well, it's definitely the case. I mean, that's the reason why they have Bedrock set up for government purposes, because being able to hit those on either the non-gov Bedrock or even directly is too much of a security risk for government purposes. Um, Even though
Yeah, but
obviously
is it that when you use Bedrock, you're using your own dedicated? Like I don't
not
know enough
dedicated,
to answer that.
not dedicated. You're
So you
just in a
might be
smaller pool.
you're on shared hardware with other
You're in
tenants.
like a smaller pool set up for that particular infrastructure level
Yeah, but I would imagine for certain use
or impact level.
cases, you would further segment.
Mhm.
um, cool. So one other thing before we go, I think it's a kind of fun way to close out. How about Sora too?
I haven't been
Uh,
able to mess with it myself, but I see everybody else messing with it.
yeah,
Makes me a little bit jealous.
yeah, I'm on the wait list for it. And I know there's ways to get a code on Twitch or not Twitch, Discord servers.
Hmm.
There's ways to there's a little bit of an arbitrage market there. I'm not a ChatGPT Pro customer. For
Hmm.
those not familiar, Sora 2 is the new video model that OpenAI came out with. and I'm having fun watching the videos. They are really amazing. Like they're obviously ridiculous and not real in many cases, but there's definitely copyright concerns that are coming up. So for the most part, a lot of them are people who are deceased. So the idea behind defamation may not be at play, but maybe could be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I heard that also people had to opt out of it instead of opt in.
Opt out of using it?
Of your image being used.
Oh.
Or maybe I'm hearing that wrong. I'm 1 degree disconnected from that. I haven't been able to use it. I've only been hearing other people talk about it.
Yeah. So the Wall Street Journal reported Monday that Sora would enable users to feature material protected by copyright unless copyright holders opted out of having their work appear. However, the report said blanket opt-outs did not appear to be an option, instead requiring copyright holders to submit examples of offending content. So
yeah, I had heard something about how they had done it, had made it more likely they were going to get sued or something like that.
Yeah. OpenAI has not clearly indicated which exact data its models draw from, but the appearance of characters under copyright indicates that copyright protected information to design the Sora. It used copyright protected information to design the Sora 2 system. Similarly, Google's VO3 video generation model was trained on YouTube videos, much to the dismay of some YouTube creators.
So this is maybe a little bit of a spicy topic, and I don't know, maybe it'll be something that's stupid, but when the whole financial downturn happened, and
which one?
Well, the one that was, let's say 2008.
Okay, mortgage crisis one, yeah.
And then a bunch of banks were determined to be too big to fail, and they were kind of bailed out. And people were kind of upset about like, well, what stops them from doing it again if they just get bailed out when it goes wrong? Well, I wonder how much of that is going on right now with the AI companies when it comes to data. Like, are the penalties for using copyright data enough to outweigh being first mover or the wow factor of having that moment of, you understand what I'm saying? Like, is it better off to just pay on the tail end and just say, screw it, just let it rip?
It reminds me of the like late 90s when hip hop artists were using samples and the recording companies just kind of turned a blind eye. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
But it was when the sampleists were making more money than the originals that the recording companies started suing them. And so it created a way for people to pay royalties. So my thought process is that that's where this is headed, because there's a market, and
bring it home to the whole too big to fail. It's like, will the U.S. judicial system allow some a ruling to damage these AI companies?
Right? Probably not, because of the investments already made, $500 million or whatever it is for Stargate.
Let's say someone were to bring suit with a large enough amount of money that were to damage OpenAI. Yeah. That would be like almost a national security threat in a way.
Yeah, especially with the great power competition. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that it'll be interesting. I mean, this is just the beginning. Like, the models are only going to get better. But I just had this moment, and I had this feeling, because all of a sudden I opened Instagram and I started scrolling, like as I do, and the number of videos that had been created in a short period of time that were just incredibly realistic and ridiculous at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that there are just probably kids doing it, like we like the world of video creation, generative creation of images and video is at a point where like I didn't think it would get here this fast, but it is moving at breakneck speeds. And I don't think it's before long will you be able to create full length motion pictures and music. I mean, there's already music. I mean, we didn't get to it, but there's a movie actress called Tilly Norwood that is
So
taking away actors' jobs because, they don't have the same constraints as a human. So,
I just wonder, like, everyone's talking about the negative side of things. I think that there's a lot of opinions on that, and I'd probably have one similar to a lot of other people. So I don't know if I have much to add there. But on the positive side of things, like, I wonder with this great, it's now become easy to create something with a certain amount of polish. I wonder what that means. The next things that stand out in human culture will be. They would have to be something so, like, in other words, like, they'd have to stand out from a crowd even with this amount of polish. So I wonder what kind of amazing things will be created in the future.
I could tell you what I think it is.
Yeah.
What I think it is that I think people are sentimental about the past, like the sentimental nature of the past. And I think there's a huge market for taking people that are not alive and bringing them back to life. And I think, certainly, maybe that brings up ethical issues for some people. But when I started seeing things like, Michael Jackson with Bob Ross, with, these Stephen Hawking, like in ridiculous fashion, but being able to like say, take Chris Farley and put him in a movie with somebody that's still alive, think of all the things
are coming
that
full circle because
or like musicians, like, it is coming full circle, but like, I think that, yeah, I mean, could that be a good thing or a bad thing? Is it moral? Bringing people back from the dead, like per se, and recasting them as a role that they never got to play. I mean, I think that's just super compelling for a lot of people. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that once the technology exists, maybe people will be more. I would imagine that superstars probably already have, even if they were live before this technology, have something in their will about that, about what they want their image to be used over time by their family or whatnot. So maybe there is, like a lot of
that.
There's a lot of like, good usage that, I mean, I think will happen. Hopefully people will be more thoughtful if they're about what they put in their wills in the future based on this technology. There'll be bad usage, I'm sure, but like, it's like we were talking about in this episode. I can't remember what episode it was. We've had so few episodes, I could probably pick and guess, but we were saying, that like future generations, they'll have superstars that never died. You know what I mean? Like, we don't get Elvis Presley or something like that for real. Like, I've seen a video or two in my life or something like that, but like, you don't get the real Elvis Presley. I don't know. That's the first name that came to my mind. I don't know if I might be overplaying Elvis Presley. Send us some hate. Send us anything. Let's piss off the Elvis Presley crowd and we'll get some engagement, some action.
Yeah, it was either episode 4 or 5 back in August. We talked about a bunch of stuff there, but yeah, I think it was episode 4.
So you got like certain legendary superstars that are going to be alive forever now,
Yeah, I mean, the idea behind Yeah, I do. I did think about the will thing. I did think about estate. Like there are estates and people may be entitled to royalties post somebody's death,
Mm-hmm.
their children, whatever, whoever it may be. Um, yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a super interesting concept, at least in the entertainment realm. Um, in other senses, I'm not quite sure like what the utility is of this. Like, I'm also interested in like simulation. Like that's also to me interesting, and I don't know how the video can be used for simulation, but for example, simulating like what your children might look like and how their life might play out. Um, I could see it being used for like different reasons. Like imagine like a dating app where you can link up your potential partner and like it shows you like what your life might look like you being together and like what you might look like, you know, kissing or holding hands. And then people start using that to make decisions about who they might think they might look good with, or who the children might look good with. So yeah, I can see a bunch of weird utilities that the younger generations might just grow up accustomed to. You know, like I didn't grow up in a culture of swiping to find a partner. That
Yeah.
wasn't something I was raised on. And there are people that are raised in that, like to make decisions with their sort of first instinct, you know, from like a physical perspective. So I could see like, you know, one of those apps integrating generative AI into itself.
Yeah, I think all that stuff's. I mean, with humanity, you get it all, right? The answer to every question is yes. You're gonna get
That doesn't sound too
Will someone
promising.
take hot dogs and throw them in the air and then they'll come down?
yes. The answer is yes.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but that's also really scary in some senses. But yeah, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah. I mean, the answer is yes. They're going to do that, Danny.
Well, this has been fun. Actually really enjoyed this episode. And to be fair, like we have so many episodes now that I actually can't remember like what we talked about last week. So yeah, it looks like next week we'll be talking about this N8N killer possibly, or we'll be talking about LLMs that Facebook is using, and we'll definitely be hitting on side channel attacks. How can you start sniffing other people's data in LLMs? Thanks for joining.
Played the hurry up music over yourself.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Play myself off. All right, everybody, take care.